Channel 31 acknowledges the traditional custodians of the land on which this episode was filmed, the Barraba peoples, and pay our respects to elders past, present and emerging. We extend those respects to the Wurundjeri peoples of the Kulin Nation, the land on which the Channel 31 studios are based.
Hi, I'm Bridie Shepherd, and on the Eco Show today, I'm on the Patho Plains, which is just outside of Echuca. I'll be learning about the plains wanderer, which is a critically endangered species. So let's have a wander and see if we can't find one.
I'm out on the Patho Plains today, an important area comprising just under 800 square kilometres of mainly pastoral farmland, located just near the town of Gumbower in North-Central Victoria. I'm about to chat with Kirsten and Deanna from Trust for Nature. A unique relationship has been developed between Trust for Nature and private landowners to manage this land and protect the endangered and cryptic species that is the plains wanderer.
Deanna, Kirsten, thank you so much for meeting with me today. You're both from Trust for Nature. Can you tell us about the beautiful landscape that we're currently on?
Well, this is the Patho Plains, so welcome to the Patho Plains.
Thank you.
What we are looking at is a nationally endangered grassland, critically endangered and extremely important habitat for the plains wanderer, which is also critically endangered. And safe to say, this is protected land owned by Andy and Judy McGilvray.
And protected forever. So
yeah, how do the covenants work on the land?
well, they're placed on the title of the property. So, and they're a voluntary agreement between Trust for Nature and the landowners. And once a covenant is placed on the title, it's on there in perpetuity, and it can't ever be removed.
Yeah, well, these are all working farms, but the Plains Wanderer in particular, requires very specific habitat requirements. So you can see when you look out to the grassland, it's not too thick out here, and it's not very sparse. And the Plains Wanderer, it's just right for Plains Wanderers, and we know that that is the number one key for them, is that they need to have that habitat structure right. That doesn't happen without the grazing that we have on the plains on these farms.
Yeah,
that's just remarkable. That kind of blows my mind to think that, you don't just need to kind of leave these landscapes to go wild again, but you actually need to sort of cultivate them in order to...
Yeah, they need to be actively managed, because grasslands are just so incredibly dynamic. So these grasslands just respond to the rain that we're having now. We've had a really fantastic spring across Victoria, but in particular up here. And so if you don't manage that biomass, the Plains Wanderers, there's no habitat. And we saw that happen back in when we had that above average rainfall event in Victoria, which was the end of 2010, 2011. So the population of Plains Wanderers just crashed because there was just such huge growth across the plains. There was no available habitat, or very little available habitat left for them.
So tell me about how you're kicking these goals now. How are the Plains Wanderers coming back in force?
They are increasing. The number's increasing since the crash. In terms of kicking goals for Trust for Nature, we've been able to covenant over 600 hectares of Plains Wanderer habitat here in the last couple of years, which is incredible. It's permanently protected, which means the risk of cultivation is removed, and that's the biggest threat in this landscape. And so not only that though, is that we've got this two-way working relationship with the farmers who also know what they're doing, and we learn from them about how they manage the habitat, which makes us all a stronger force, to work at restoration of the rest of the habitat for the bird.
And I think that the really, really exciting thing that gives me hope, and I know would be the same for you, Dee, is that we actually have a whole list of people that would like to covenant. We just, but we just need the money. So, and which is fantastic.
Yeah, it's a good problem to have.
Yeah.
This patch of the plains is owned by Judy and Andy McGilvery. I'm about to speak with Andy now to learn why they chose to put a covenant on their property.
So how do you manage the landscape here with your cattle?
Yeah, look, basically, we try to keep it at a level that suits the plains wanderer, which it's not that difficult. It's just that you can't graze it too short, you can't sort of overgraze, but you can't undergraze. So, and historically, it's worked out well for me because that's the way I've always grazed. So for me, there wasn't any special ideas. I mean, it just happened that I was lucky. I mean, I just grazed it the way that the little bird liked, and that's why I've got them. I mean, scientifically, it wasn't me.
Is there a limit to how many cattle you can have on your land?
There's no limit, but what I do, like for example, at the moment I've got the 800 cattle on, they'd be grazing on about 1,000 acres. And when they've sort of got it to a level I'll shift them to paddock B, for example. So it's just a rotational graze. At the moment I could do with a lot more cattle because we've had an unusual good spring, but they're so expensive. So I've even taken some people's cattle on for free. And I've got one guy's cattle, he's only got 100, he's grazing and I'm not charging him anything because they're doing a job for me and to help the bird, so it's good.
Is there much of a sense in the community of the Plains Wanderer? Do other farmers around here know of them?
Most people who have the Patho Plains do, but when you go if we went 20 k's west, it all becomes irrigation land. And if we went the same south, it all becomes cropping land. So they're sort of not really interested, it's only us. And I think the guys that have actually seen a Plains Wanderer or have got them, yeah, they get this new joy about them. It really is a nice feeling.
Just because you're protecting?
Yeah, because we are protecting them, yeah. And we've got such wonderful people that we're working with that spread the word.
Yep.
Yeah, no, they're amazing.
And so we also saw that you love the Plains Wanderer so much that you have painted a mural.
Yeah.
Was that you personally painting the mural?
No, that was a bit of a whim my wife had. So Judy, actually, we were driving out here one day and she saw the shed and she said, God, that's an ugly shed. And don't get me wrong, she loves the Patho Plains as well. And she'd read a story about a Scottish artist that was out here, stuck because of COVID. And he was actually living in this area. So we contacted him and he did the mural.
It's beautiful.
And it worked out really well too, because his father in Scotland is a twitcher, bird lover. So he's actually following now the Plains Wanderer from Scotland. So it was an amazing thing, yeah. He loves it.
Sorry, what was that term? Twitcher?
Twitcher, yeah, bird watchers.
Would you call yourself a twitcher?
Probably a Plains Wanderer twitcher.
Getting very specific.
Yeah, no, I'm not really. No, I am a bit of a twitcher. I'm a bit of a bird lover, yeah.
Hopefully everyone watching will become twitchers by the end of this.
Yeah, I hope so. Yeah, I can show you some eagles and some other stuff besides the Plains Wanderer. No, it is good.
Sounds great.
Yeah.
It's such an interesting, balanced ecosystem.
It is.
That's working with humans and cattle and also the native wildlife, which is incredible.
And it's not that difficult, I don't think.
Whilst filming in Echuca, our crew chose to stay at the Clock Tower Suites. Centrally located within a short walk to the central shopping precinct, restaurants, pubs and the historical port area of Echuca. Soak up the history and atmosphere of this grand old building, the former Echuca Post Office. The Clock Tower Suites is the perfect place for you to relax and unwind. Stay in the heart of Echuca at the luxurious Clock Tower Suites. To book your stay at the Clock Tower Suites, visit clocktowersuites.com.au.
There are many landowners on the Patho Plains who are doing their bit to assist in the conservation of the Plains Wanderers. I set off to visit another couple who have proudly covenanted their land, Andrew and Faye Bale.
So we have 3 properties that we run, totalling about 445 hectares, and we have one that's about 172 hectares that's a native grassland that's been in Andrew's family over 60 years, and Andrew's been managing that grassland for over 50 years himself. And yeah, we run just the merino sheep out there generally. We found out that Plains Wanderers also live out there, and we've been doing some fencing to soil type, dividing big paddocks into smaller paddocks so that we're able to concentrate on grazing like a red soil or a grey soil so that we can target it at the right time and work with it much better.
How are you grazing animals differently here?
Yeah, so our main aim is to not overgraze, and they're the things that we've learnt through our involvement with Trust for Nature and other Plains Wanderer gurus, that we need to protect that red soil. So that's been part of our thinking and management of the grasslands.
Andrew's parents bought the land he and Faye now own in the 1950s, and Andrew built their beautiful country home here in 1980.
You've both been here for quite a while. Did you see Plains Wanderers when you first sort of spent time on the land here?
I saw one probably about, I was only in my early 20s, and I was shifting sheep in the middle of the day in the front paddock on the motorbike, and this bird was just on the ground and not moving, and I know now, I actually picked it up, looked at it and put it back. I know now it was a female Plains Wanderer.
You just picked it up?
Yeah. It didn't move. And I didn't know for probably 20 years what it was. So, but yeah, we've seen probably about half a dozen over the time at different stages. In the middle of the day, in amongst the ewes and lambs, when we've gone through one day, one got up, and yeah, that was probably 10 years ago, but yeah.
You can only see them quickly, like if you see them and you think, oh yeah, they landed over there, by the time you get there, they're nowhere to be seen. In the daytime, they're really challenging to find.
So, placing a covenant on your land is a pretty big deal. Can you tell me why you chose to go to these lengths to protect the ecosystem here?
It's not always about the financial reward of, you know, cultivating and growing a crop or whatever. To me, it was about protecting what nature had already provided.
So it sounds like this has been a very rewarding experience, and working with Trust for Nature has been a very rewarding experience. Would you recommend it to other people?
Absolutely. We've learnt so much through our involvement with Trust for Nature and all of the Plains Wanderer gurus that we've met along the way. It's been a shared learning, and yeah, it's been nothing but rewarding. And yeah, I'd just like to say that our grasslands, and in the springtime, there's no better place to be. And when those flowers start popping up, and it is the most magic thing and so great for your soul. And that is the biggest reward. And, you know, Trust for Nature have just shared their journey of what they're trying to do, and it's inspiring.
Faye, you're quite involved with the Plains Wanderer in the community, is that right?
Yes. Andrew and I have been involved with many different groups. We're on the Victorian recovery team, and I'm also the president of our local Northern Plains Conservation Management Network. And Andrew and I have done quite a few community engagements and sharing our knowledge about the Plains Wanderer and the grasslands. And I think in the last 5 years, our community is gaining momentum in understanding about the Plains Wanderer. And just recently, Trust for Nature had a big group of articles in the paper calling for expressions of interest for grasslands. And again, that just reiterated in the community that Plains Wanderer is out there, and just reiterated that it's around.
Dr David Baker-Gabb has been working with threatened species and specialised recovery teams for the last 25 years. His work now focuses on the Plains Wanderers, and unlike other threatened species he's worked with, the birds have been in danger for over a decade, and there's still a lot to be done to ensure their survival.
So why are they critically endangered? What's been happening here that's been so detrimental to the species?
So the main thing, if you go back historically, has been land clearing. So they used to be on the plains west of Melbourne, almost not there. They used to be on the plains west of Adelaide, not there at all. They used to be on the Liverpool Plains, west inland from Sydney, not there at all. So they've basically gone from a huge area that they used to occupy. And that area was the most productive area that they occupied. So if you think about carrying capacity of sheep on the Liverpool Plains or the plains west of Melbourne, and you think about the carrying capacity way up in Queensland, it's chalk and cheese. You know, it's way lower, and it's the same for all the species of birds and animals that follow that gradient. So even though they might not have lost all of their area, they've lost pretty much most of the best areas, and so 99% of those plains west of Melbourne are completely gone, mostly to crops and other introduced pastures, but some to buildings, you know, the expanding houses of Melbourne. And the others up this way, you know, it's cultivation again that's really been the main issue, because they require really distinct type of grassland. It's a native grassland. So native grasses grow with a tussocky structure. So you don't just have a sward. And so animals like plains wanderers can move between the grasses. Now, it's important because they forage by moving like that, but they also avoid predators by running between the grasses. So a land-based predator, a cat or a fox, or back in the day a quoll or a dingo or something, they could avoid them just by running away and hiding. And if it's dense, they can't run away. So that change in the type of grasslands and crops and bare ground means that they've lost 95% of their habitat up here.
The biggest threat to these birds has been land clearing. Plains that have been cleared for crops and houses on the very distinct native grasslands these birds require to survive. The species once thrived on plains across the eastern and southern parts of Australia. Now they no longer exist on the plains west of Adelaide, the Liverpool Plains in New South Wales, and 99% of the plains west of Melbourne.
Well, plains wanderers are small quail-like birds, and if they were standing on tippy toes, then they'd be about the size of my hand, so from here to there, so 15 centimetres, thereabouts.
Yeah.
So the females, and the males for that matter, when they want to see, they'll stand up on tippy toes, and their heads bob, just like other shorebirds' heads bob. Yeah. So they're up like this, looking around. And then they down and through the grass, if they want to get away from something, and then they pop up, up periscope, bomb, 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 off again. Both birds can be well camouflaged. So the female has this black collar with studded white diamonds, like we talk about a diamond fighter, a little bird, so with so that there, and then a rufous breast, and so that's sort of. And she is quite a bit bigger than the male. She's sort of this dull, grassy brown on the back. And the male's just this sort of dull, grassy brown, bit paler on the underneath. And he's much more, dully coloured, because in plains wanderers, it's the girls that are bigger, that they command the territory, they do all the calling. So they have this call during the breeding season where they go boop, 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 as they get a bit more excited. And if they get really angry, if you play a tape at them, they come up the grass out, boop, and then kick, 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 kick. They're ready to take you on. Whereas the males, they're the totally domestic homebodies. And once she lays a clutch of eggs, he sits on them. And he incubates them, and then he does all the chick rearing. Females will breed, in a say spring, maybe with 2 males, and they lay, 3 to 5 eggs, so they'll have usually around 3 to 4 chicks, and they seem to have quite a high survival rate, those chicks, provided it's not overgrazed. And then if it rains in, say, February, you get a good dump of rain, 15, 20 mils, they'll breed again. And then if it rains maybe again in autumn, another 15 to 20 mils or more, they might breed again. So they really can breed quite rapidly. plains wanderers are unique in the world. In terms of, there's about 10,000 species of bird in the world, and if you look at the genetic distinctiveness of all of those birds, so I'm not related, the ones that are least related to anything else, and their extinction risk, plains wanderers have been categorised by overseas publications as #1 in the world. This is the most important bird in the world in terms of not losing a major branch off the evolutionary tree.
Whoa.
So, this is a big responsibility. But, you know, and then there's single species in a genus, only in a genus of its own. So we have subspecies, species, genus, family. But if you lose a family, there's very few birds or animals of any type that are in a family all of their own. So a plains wanderer is in a family all of its own. So that's a big limp comes off you know, and we're talking millions of years of evolution. They found fossils related to plains wanderers here in Australia at around 30 million years old.
That still look like plains wanderers today.
Well, their bone structure says to the osteologist, this is a plains wanderer ancient ancestor. So they're part of Australia's ancient avifauna. And Australia has so many wonderful, unique things. And most of us Australians don't even know about it.
I've never heard of the plains wanderers until recently.
Yep.
And the fact that it's so evolutionarily significant is something that I couldn't even comprehend until recently. They're very cool.
Yeah.
And you're doing some amazing work here, which is just, it's very, very exciting stuff.
Yeah, so it's great that, you know, we're learning more about it, and some of the best advocates have been Zoos Victoria, because you may know, or I'm sure you do now, that they're breeding them in captivity, and they're doing very well. They've run out of space, they've done that well. So the birds are breeding fantastically, and they came from these plains around here. So I caught them all a couple of years ago, and they looked after them exceptionally well, took them back there, and they're breeding. And this year we're planning to release some back onto those paddocks, you know, where they came from or nearby, so to, you know, actually help boost those populations. So that'll be pretty exciting, and we'll learn a lot about them. And we've learned a lot about them, you know, from the captive work, because they film them 24/7, and so we've learned all sorts of things about displays and behaviour that we never had a clue about before, because they're so jolly hard to see.
Possibly one of the few birds so difficult to see as to be described as cryptic, I was astounded to learn about the uniqueness of the plains wanderer today. Categorised as the most important bird in the world, it is necessary to ensure the survival of these creatures, as they are the only species left in their animal family. Thanks to the tireless efforts of Trust for Nature, Zoos Victoria and the owners of these covenanted properties, we are on our way to restoring the numbers of these ancient Australian birds.
Today I've learnt that the plains wanderer is anything but plain. They're a unique species with evolutionary significance, and they've got some great feminist values. I've met the amazing landholders who live here, and also the experts and the community who have come together to support this species, and things are looking pretty good for the plains wanderer. Until next time.